some time ago, Bernie Sanders was being interviewed by Cardi B, famous rap star and content creator. She's done a lot of work online, has a huge social media following. Well, recently now, Senator Bernie Sanders had a talk on Thursday with rapper Killer Mike. And of course, it needs to be noted that Killer Mike was with Bernie Sanders during the 2016 campaign trail. And so it's very great. I'm excited to see these two back together again. It's awesome to hear their message. And Sanders and Killer Mike discussed the progressive center's stance on income inequality, healthcare, and how issues affect African Americans. Killer Mike, who endorsed Sanders in 2016 presidential bid, told the Vermont Senator that his economic policy was the only policy that matches up with the Poor People's Campaign, the sweeping effort led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to combat income inequality. The two went on to discuss healthcare and income inequalities and how these issues relate to the black community. This is a statement from Killer Mike. Black people are more disproportionately affected by diabetes than any other group. So when you say diabetes and are talking about free healthcare, I want people who look like me on the other side of the camera to recognize this is a black issue. The two also discussed the support Sanders has from other recent hip-hop artists such as Cardi B and Sanders earlier this month, in which they discussed issues such as Medicare for All and minimum wage. People ride you a little bit for getting hip-hop on board, but it's not like you sent out feelers in the hottest clubs, Killer Mike said. You don't have Bernie Sanders in the compound buying bottles recruiting us. Kids in hip-hop come from working class and poor environments. Also, this is a statement from Killer Mike about what it means to be rich and how they discuss income inequality. This is a statement from Killer Mike. Rich is a long life with your children. My grandparents were never rich. They raised 3 successful homeowners. We never had to go back to them and ask them, that's rich. Rich is being able to spend time with your family. Rich is not an endless pursuit of money, and I'm a rapper, right? I got a chain and a Rolex. And then Bernie Sanders went on to state, hey, you know what? Shaking Killer Mike's hand. I've been trying to say that for several years, and this guy just did it a lot better than I did. So, and a final note too, Killer Mike said earlier this year that he'd be behind Senator Bernie Sanders' run because he's the only person that can beat Trump, and that's a fact. Just remember from the polling data from 2016 where 538 and Nate Silver refused to acknowledge that Bernie Sanders had a much more higher percentage in beating Trump in the double digits than Hillary Clinton did. And it's the same this way around as well. But yet corporate media wants to run this ridiculous narrative that Biden is somehow this major front runner, when in fact it's Bernie. Bernie Sanders has the political infrastructure, the policy, the message, and the will to really defeat President Donald Trump and take on this neoliberal, neoconservative system that we have. And I think it's long overdue. I think there's enough to jumpstart his campaign to really go on to the third debate and afterwards win the primaries.
Yeah, so I think that just to give a very small little anecdotal piece, that MSNBC just had a thing recently between Trump and Sanders and Trump and Biden and Trump and Warren, and Sanders got second place behind Biden, but they still put him in third for some reason. So I think that this is really good. This interview was very good, and especially again because an African American vote is up in the air. Biden still on paper has a lot of it right now, at least. And Elizabeth Warren does very poorly with it. So if you take away Biden... hold on.
Sorry, I got to interrupt you. Cassie Lloyd, thank you so much for the super chat. Again, really humbled by it. Inspirational as always. Thank you for your view on Bernie. Hashtag 46 Nina Tulsi, our team. You know what?
Thank you so much.
Here's the thing. All of you guys, our viewers, our subscribers, people who just share our content and view it, our people who donate in super chat, and our Patreon supporters, you're really helping us build something. And already, just in case you joined us right now, it is official. We have a brand new studio, but we'll talk more about that at the end of the show, or just rewatch the show at the first beginning.
We'll clip it. We're gonna have a clip. So blah. Yeah, you know how.
But it's official. We have a studio. But Daniel, go ahead, take it away.
So. By the way, thank you again, Kathy.
Yeah, Cassie. Always. Wow, it helps so much.
We can buy a new something with that.
Better gear.
We're gonna figure out what to do. I have in mind a few things for all the people that have really donated a lot in super chat over time that we're gonna name things for you on the new studio set. So I completely lost. Okay, Killer Mike. Okay, so I really like that in a sense. Bernie Sanders isn't a wordsmith. I think we can all agree that there are other people that speak a little more eloquently than Bernie Sanders, but it's fascinating. And another part of that article or the interview itself, that Killer Mike said, I've been so inspired in how I use words because of you. So Bernie Sanders is not a wordsmith, but he sure as hell inspires them. This is a really cool sit down. And one thing I like about Killer Mike, though, again, he does know how to word things very well. And I think especially in the last election, he talked about that if there's anyone who has a policy and a plan similar to Martin Luther King, which of course Bernie Sanders was very connected with, did all those things when Elizabeth Warren was a Republican. I'll make sure I put that point out again. He was there. He's been there since the beginning. And how many people 60 years ago, 50 years ago, ever thought they would get kudos for helping in the Civil Rights March? Not a lot of people. So here today, I'm glad someone at least is saying, Sanders, I appreciate what you've done. And I'm inspired by you.
No, wait, what did Biden do? Hold on, guys, refresh my memory. Paul, what did Biden do during the civil rights movement?
Well, he claimed to have marched in it several times and had to have his aides come at him and say, stop saying that, everyone knows you didn't march. I loved this interview with Killer Mike. I thought it was excellent. It does remind me a lot of the sit down that they had during the 2016 campaign, although I have to mention that I liked the barbershop set a lot more. The backdrop on this one was a little more plain, but the content of what they were talking about was fantastic and I loved it. Their brief conversation about Martin Luther King talked about some of the lesser known aspects of his activism, his anti-war positions, his fact that he largely was a socialist and really fought for the underserved and the poor classes in America, particularly later in his career. Their discussion around pharmaceutical prices was particularly powerful. So Sanders talked a lot about the need for insulin, diabetic patients who need insulin, who are unable to pay those costs, are often rationing their insulin, which is not a thing you're supposed to do, can lead to diabetics becoming sick and even dying by not having enough insulin, even just trying to ration it. And he makes a very, very good point that insulin prices are 10 times higher in America than they are in Canada, and talks about his trip over the border into Canada to buy insulin at a tenth of the price, and the exact same drug from the exact same plant, from the exact same company, with the exact same packaging materials, 1/10 of the price. So this isn't a supply and demand thing. And I also wanted to point out, since I mentioned supply and demand and thinking about economies and things like that, this conversation where Killer Mike is talking about rich is being able to, provide for your family, have this full life. That's so true, and it doesn't get talked about often enough in politics and in economics, because our system does not see things that way. Systematically, our system says that the only thing that rich means is more money, and the only thing that rich means is corporations make more money. That's their only end goal. There is no room. There is zero room in capitalism for someone defining rich as having a full life with your children, because capitalism only knows bottom line, shareholder, and money.
And in the world that the neoliberal establishment are creating with corporations, they have made no room for us or themselves, because it's all consuming. And once we really pollute our environment and we really truly destroy our ecosystem, we'll realize that you just can't eat money, Can't eat your credit cards. You could try. Somebody might be successful, but it's not going to work.
And I think I'll make one last point on this, that it's not just, it's something that we work a lot at behind the scenes at Heartlands Media for the future. And I see a few people talking about this in chat of how do you keep someone from selling out? And it's all within the structure of what is important, where the keys are. If you are a company that starts progressive, gets very large, been around for a number of years, and you take a large multi-million-dollar check from an outside source, that is an obvious...
Not naming no names.
No, I mean, it could be anyone. That puts you... I look at it, the way I view these things is the fact that you took the $20 million is an obvious input, obvious output situation. You are now required to pay it back, which means you need to have a return of a certain amount. You lose your freedom. And in this world, it's easy to sell out, but it's hard to do the right thing. But I like to think that you can make a system where that's not always the case, where doing the right thing is the thing you get rewarded for, and having a business where people want to be real, want to be, and they're not tied in the same way. Like we talk about regular media. If you don't have government sources or White House sources or business sources, you don't have a job if you're a reporter. That's not something I care about because it causes a certain way of thinking that leads to corruption and source building.
Yeah.
It's all about management has to make sure that the workers are in a spot where they're not put in that pinch, and the people that support the company have to be able to keep the management. The cycle must continue and it must be sustainable.
So before we do move on, I want to add this final note. The reason why, and I'm going to speak for myself. I'm not going to speak for the rest of the team. Everyone else can add their own input. But the reason why I'm doing this here at Hardlands Media, why we're reporting here, why we want to create this whole new space, why we got this new studio is because I have seen firsthand corruption and neoliberalism here in the city of Chicago. I've seen it. I still cannot forget when me and Daniel were there at the DNC convention in Philadelphia in 2016, and I made a mental promise to myself that, I want to do something that's going to make sure that something like this never happens again. And let's face it, here in the United States, we don't have a strong independent media network. And yes, there are other independent media networks out there as well, but people need to step up, and we need to really hold those in power accountable. And it's up for all of you as well to step up, run for office, because Bernie Sanders, I don't want to say this, he will not be around for forever. And it's going to require all of you to learn from what he is doing and to actually be a leader yourself and lead your communities, run for office, because we have to fight for that better future. There's no knight up in the hill that's going to save us. There's no great victory. The people who are going to make the difference are all of us, and that's why we're doing this here at Hardlands Media. And that's why I'm really excited about this new studio. That's why I'm really excited about what's happening for this 2020 election cycle. And that's why I'm in full support of Senator Bernie Sanders, because I believe in his message.